But I've noticed food is kind of a central theme here.
Yeah, you guys want a Pop-Tart?
Yeah, it's breakfast of champions.
It is.
Leslie Sanchez, Republican strategist and CNN political contributor, is always on time. Sorry, Leslie.
If I gave you my love, I'll tell Newton what I'd do. I'd expect a whole lot of love out of you. You got to be good to me. I'm gonna be good to you. There's a whole lot of things you and I could do.
Advertisement that accused the USA itself of terrorism.
Jeremy Glick is the son of a Port Authority worker who died at 9/11, and he had signed an anti-war petition, and O'Reilly had to have him on.
And they were so persistent about getting me on the O'Reilly show because they found out that I was on the advisory board and signed a statement that was against the war.
You were the only one. I was surprised. And the reason I was surprised is that this ad equates the United States with the terrorists.
I said, I'm shocked that you're surprised, and basically just made the only point I wanted to make.
Our current president now inherited a legacy from his father and inherited a political legacy that's responsible for training militarily, economically, and situating geopolitically the parties involved in the alleged assassination and murder of my father and countless of thousands of others. So I don't see why it's so surprising for you to think that I would come back and want to support.
It is surprising, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's surprising. You are mouthing a far-left position.
It was extremely intimidating sitting down in the studio because he's really tall.
You see, I'm sure your beliefs are sincere, but what upsets me is I don't think your father would be approving of this.
Well, actually, my father thought that Bush's presidency was illegitimate.
Maybe he did, but I don't think he'd be equating this country as a terrorist nation.
Well, I wasn't saying that it was necessarily like that.
You signed this and it absolutely said that.
Jeremy was pretty cool during it, and he was giving his political views, which were very to the left of O'Reilly's.
And he said, oh, I don't really care what you think politically. And I said, obviously you do care, because A, you brought me on the show, and B, I told him that he uses 9/11 and sympathy with the 9/11 families and the lives lost to rationalize his narrow right-wing agenda.
You evoke sympathy with the 9/11 families.
That's a bunch of crap.
So
I've done more for the 9/11 families, by their own admission. I've done more for them than you will ever hope to do.
Okay.
So you keep your mouth shut when you sit me exploiting those people.
You're not representing
and I never represent you. You know why?
Why?
Because you have a warped view of this world and a warped view of this country.
Well, explain that. Let me give you an example.
No, I'm not going to debate this with you.
Well, let me give you an example of parallel experiences.
No,
on September 14th. Here's the record.
All right? You didn't support the action against Afghanistan to remove the Taliban. You were against it.
Why would I want to brutalize and further punish the people in Afghanistan?
Who killed your father?
The people in Afghanistan didn't kill my father.
Sure they did. The Al-Qaeda people were trained there.
The Al-Qaeda people? What about the Afghanistan?
See, I'm more angry about it than you are.
So what about George Bush?
What about George Bush? He had nothing to do with it.
The director, senior, as director.
He had nothing to do with it.
So the people that trained 100,000 mujahideen who were
I hope your mom isn't watching this. I hope your mother is not watching this. Because you That's it. I'm not going to say any more.
Okay.
In respect for your father...
September 14th, you want to know what I was doing?
Shut up.
Please don't tell me to shut up.
In respect for your father, who was a Port Authority worker, a fine American, who got killed unnecessarily by barbarians.
By radical extremists trained by this government.
Respect
not
for
the
him,
people of America,
I'm not
the people, the ruling class, the small minority.
Cut his mic. I'm not going to dress you down anymore, out of respect for your father. We'll be back in a moment with more of the fact.
We're done?
We're done.
You see him gesturing to security guards, and then came the after-film performance.
After they were off the air, he said to the kid something to the effect, "Get out of my studio before I f***ing tear you to pieces." So Jeremy, and I've talked to him since, actually went to the green room to get a cup of coffee.
And the executive producer and the assistant encouraged me to leave the building because they were, quote, concerned that if O'Reilly ran into me in the hallway, he would end up in jail.
This is our house here. If somebody comes to your house and begins spitting on the floor, you'd remove them. Glick was out of control and spewing hatred for this program and his country using vile propaganda.
The next day, I just turned on and watched the follow-up and saw my views totally distorted. Next thing I know, I was saying Bush planned 9/11.
Glick was saying without a shred of evidence that President Bush and Bush the elder were directly responsible for 9/11. Now, that kind of stuff is not only loony, it's defamation.
That paints me as a fringe conspiracy nut.
This kid said nothing about President Bush and his father, Bush the elder, orchestrating the attack on their own country. So O'Reilly's just lying here.
He came on this program and accused President Bush of knowing about 9/11 and murdering his own father.
Glick said, "Can I sue him?" And so I called the lawyer who was in my case of Fox versus Dutton and Franken. He says, "Well, the kid has to prove that O'Reilly knew he was lying. And O'Reilly is so crazy, he lies so pathologically that it's harder to prove that O'Reilly knew he was lying." So oddly enough, if someone has a record of crazily lying, it is harder to sue them for defamation.
Cowed the Democratic Party into silence. There should be one party that sticks up for this issue. Not expecting it from this crowd, but some audience somewhere should stick up for this issue.
Now, Roger Ailes said that Fox are going to scale back the rhetoric. Do you think this will last for any longer than a week or two?
No, because that's the rhetoric they love. The right wing loves the go-to rhetoric for them is, wouldn't it be fun to kill the people we disagree with? You know, they try to put across this false equivalence. No? Really? Then do you read? Have you seen what people have said? Left-wingers don't talk that way.
Setting here at Somerset House really is spectacularly beautiful, and there's even a full bar, although the combination of mild wine and ice is probably potentially pretty dangerous, especially if you're as rubbish at skating as I am. Oh my God! Daisy Gray, London Today, Somerset House.